For being here this evening. I don't know about you, but this Wednesday feels particularly just like a slug to get through the rest of the week. So I really appreciate everybody taking the time out of your busy days, especially in this evening hour when you're often home with kiddos and maybe starting the bath time and bedtime and dinner routines, just getting off of work. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. Our session of Ready for Pre-K this evening is building a positive relationship with your child and navigating big feelings with our very special guest this evening, Dr. Dominique Charlot-Swilly. And my name is Drew. I'm with the Early Childhood Division here at DCPS, and I'll be helping to facilitate and get this session started this evening. Before we dive into our content for tonight, there are a couple of housekeeping items that I wanted to go over with the group. We're using Zoom to host tonight's session. So throughout the session, we'll invite you to enter your questions and your comments into the chat. You're also welcome and encouraged to unmute if you feel comfortable sharing. We really love hearing your voices and connecting. So please don't be shy about that. We do want to warn you, though, that the session is being recorded, so make sure that your camera is off if you would not like to be on camera. These are posted to the DCPS YouTube page and also our Ready for Pre-K page afterwards, so that any families who weren't able to make it this evening can catch it at a later date. Also, if you need any technology assistance during the session, you can use the chat feature as well. All right, the next thing that I wanted to go over before we get started is that we are offering simultaneous interpretation in Spanish this evening. So I'm gonna pause for a quick announcement from our interpreter if you would like to use these interpretation services. Eleazar, I'm gonna pass it over to you for this.
Thank you. So to select English, if you're on a computer, please click on the globe-like icon at the bottom right of your Zoom window, and then select English. If you're on a tablet or a smartphone, then click on the three dots at the bottom right of your Zoom window, and then on language interpretation, then English. Now, if you do not select language, you will not be able to hear the interpreter if someone does speak Spanish. Para seleccionar español, en caso de que ustedes tengan una computadora, por favor seleccionen el botón que dice interpretación en los controles que están en la parte de abajo de su pantalla y elige español. Si está en una tableta o en un celular, haga clic en los tres puntitos de la esquina inferior derecha de su ventana de Zoom, luego en interpretación de idioma, luego en español. Si no selecciona el idioma, no podrá escuchar al intérprete cuando hable en su idioma. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for making that announcement. Megan, do you mind, now that we're on here and I can't see everyone, to go ahead and make sure that the interpretation function is on and give us the all clear for that? Right.
It is not enabled yet.
Not enabled yet. Okay. Let's see.
I'm having a hard time finding it for some reason. I don't have the globe thing.
No problem. Give us just a second, everyone. I will add it now. Okay. Does it look like it's working for everyone now?
Yep.
Wonderful. All right. So the next thing before we get started with tonight's session, I did want to go over a couple of our community agreements. We like to start all of our Ready for Pre-K sessions off with just some general community agreements for the group and for our time together this evening. Those agreements are be kind, be patient, be open. We're really committed to making sure that this is a forum and a place where everyone feels safe and welcome and respected. And with that, we are so excited to welcome our special guest, Dr. Dominique Charlot-Swilly, who will be presenting tonight's session. Dr. Charlot-Swilly is a clinical psychologist working with the Early Childhood Innovation Network here in Washington, D.C. She joined us last year for a session on supporting children's social and emotional development during challenging times, and we've received such great feedback from that session and learned so much from her experience and expertise that we were delighted to be able to invite her back for this session tonight. One of the topics that we get a lot of requests for, and parents tend to have a lot of questions about, myself included, is how to handle children's big feelings and challenging behaviors, and how to keep your cool yourself, and what's typical and what's not typical, and where to go for support. So we are delighted to have you back this evening. And with that, Dr. Charlotte Swilly, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and turn it over to you to get us started. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and get my screen activated. Are we good? Everyone could see?
Yeah, it's looking good.
Perfect, perfect. I just want to pause for a moment before we get started. You know, I am a parent of 3 daughters myself, and although they are away right now in college, I remember well what that means to have to run from A to B to Z to get them, you know, leave work and do this. So I just want to really create a 1-minute moment of pause and stillness, just to have breath, because all of us are carrying so much. Some of you may be carrying loss, some of you may be carrying angst regarding the social, political, cultural climate. Some of us are carrying angst about what's going on in Florida. I'm one person carrying that angst right now and just worried about family, children, and the like. So I have my little timer here, and I'm just going to create 1 minute of stillness. And I just encourage all of you as parents, moms, dads, grandma, whoever is in this space today, you know, you could do a 1 minute under the light while you're driving or in the bus or wherever you are. It becomes so important to take care of self. So with that said, I'm just going to go ahead and pause for 1 minute. And if you like, I invite you just to take a few deep breaths. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Would love to hear in the chat how that felt, just to take 1 minute of breath. Would love to hear in the chat. Please put your thoughts in the chat. So we are going to talk about building positive relationships. And I just want to start with this. Often it is the hardest to be calm when our little ones need us the most. Yeah, it's the hardest sometimes to really be able to take that in, because when we're not okay, our babies, our children are not okay. And I really would like this to be interactive. So please, if you want to unmute and ask questions as we go along, please feel free to do so. But when this baby here is screaming, it's hard for us to stay calm as parents. And what that brings up sometimes is our own past. And we start hearing shark music. When we hear shark music, it's often hard to really be able to take in all of what's needed. Because what ends up happening is that it triggers for us some of our own past. It triggers that for us. Mine thinks it's not stopping. So it triggers for us some of our own past, some of our own past stories. Oh my gosh, this child, what is this child doing? This child is making me feel uncomfortable. People are watching. Stop crying now. So all of these tapes are running in our head when these events happen. But it does trigger some of our own angst and anxieties about what to do. How can we all astutely recall, I know I do, being at the supermarket and having a child have a meltdown? And what do we do? And all of what is going on inside is stirred up. Does that sound familiar to anyone? Thumbs up, yes in the chat, thumbs down. So yeah. So how do we begin to really think about building relationship? And one of the things I want to say, yeah, Megan, thank you. One of the things I could say, and I want to start from the beginning, is that your attention as a caregiver is one of the most powerful, most rewarding things that you could do for a child, that you could give to a child, is giving that child that attention. And to begin to do that, it becomes so important to provide that child with the needed attention that she or he needs. So one of the ways in which building that positive relationship becomes so important, and the ways to do that, is what I call the 3 C's: consistency, continuity, and compassion. And when I say consistency is one of the most essential components from start to finish. It means consistency with the schedule to the extent that you can as a parent. Consistency in terms of the routines, morning routines, weekend routines, bedtime routines, consistency around the rules of your home, around the values that you show that are important. And it's hard to sometimes do that, but it is so important, especially in the midst of all of what's happening, how we're always navigating and navigating. So multitasking is really the word I'm looking for. Multitasking, all the things, but consistency is so important. Continuity. Some of our children are, moms and dads are not in the same household. Sometimes they are, even when when the parents are in the same household, or grandma and grandpa, whoever's raising the baby, it becomes so important to have a continuity of voice, one voice. So that means that if this child is living in one home and going to another home over the weekend or what have you, it's so important for there to be continuity in what is expected, so that one home is not doing something that's different from the other home. Our children are very, very smart. And so they will learn how to play one home against another home often. So just really important to have that continuity. Compassion. Compassion first with yourself. As parents, we don't always get it right. And what is right? What does that really mean? Just out there trying to do your best in raising these little people to be responsible, loving, caring, joyful, happy, and every other word in there, children. And it's okay not to get it right, but to start with self-compassion. So giving yourself a little break at times. And sometimes if you didn't get it right, whatever that means for you, kind of talk about it even. Mommy's tired, daddy's tired. Mommy, just had a hard day and mommy didn't mean to yell. There's different perspectives out there, whether or not an adult should apologize to a child. I personally think there's value in that, just in terms of professionally, there's value in that. So just really self-compassion and compassion for self and for others. So when we talk about this behavior, you see consistencies coming up again. Consistency means purposefully choosing how are you going to engage. And when we talk about wanting to establish some guidelines around behavior, it starts also with consistency, and it has to be predictable. And there needs to be a follow through. What do I mean by follow through? I mean that if you laid out the rules and regulations of the home, and this is the expectation of your home, then consistency, it has to be predictable, and it has to have a follow through. Because all of our babies' behaviors, all behavior, adults, children, whatever age, all behavior is purposeful. So I'm going to say that again. All behavior is purposeful. It's up to us sometimes to figure out what is the purpose behind the behavior, but all behavior is purposeful. And so it is up to us as the adult to look for the why beneath the behavior. So you see the screaming, you see the acting out, but the why beneath the behavior can be is underneath this iceberg. Is this child feeling loved? Is this child feeling confused? Is this child having some angry feelings and just does not know the words to communicate for whatever she or he is feeling? Does this child have emotional intelligence? What do I mean by that? Emotional intelligence means, does this child have words linked to what they're feeling on the inside? Because these emotions come out in sensations around the body. So there may be a heartbeat, there may be a tingly feeling, there may be a tightness. The same things that happen to us around emotions as adults, children may experience, but they do not yet have the language to be able to explain it. But it's up to us to try to figure out the why beneath the behavior. So some of the possible whys. Is it a medical issue that's going on? So all behaviors, remember I said, all behaviors have purpose. So it's up to us to determine what the function of the behavior is. So think about meets. Is it meeting the goal for this child? What goal is it meeting? Is there a medical issue going on that maybe the child just got? Of course, when we know that our babies go get vaccinated, that's a whole new experience. Maybe there's a reaction to that. Is it the child is trying to escape a situation, meaning that they don't really want to do it, so they're trying to dodge the situation? Is it that the child is in need of attention? And I'm going to pause with that one, because attention is a significant one. Children will feed off negative attention as well as positive attention. So what do I mean when I say negative attention as well as positive attention? So let's say that something is happening and the child is engaging in something. If that is not according to the standards of your standards as a parent, if then that's when you're providing that child with significant amount of attention, guess what? And that's the only that's the only time the child feels that he or she is receiving that attention. they're going to continue to repeat that same behavior because maybe that's the only time that mommy, daddy, grandma, granddad, auntie is giving me that attention. Don't do this, don't do that. So, no, this is not okay. No, don't. I'm giving that attention. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the attention piece a little bit later. Another reason is tangible. They're trying to gain something. So they want it, they're begging for it, they're hitting it, they're grabbing it, they're biting, you know, they want something. So it's a tangible need. And sometimes it's sensory. Some kids are sensory kids. And so they have a sense, there's a need to feel something, and that's the way to get them regulated. And at the same time that behavior is purposeful, it does not mean that as parents, we don't set boundaries, because it is also important for children to know that there are boundaries. So setting those boundaries, setting the limitations, if one of the boundaries in your home is that we don't hit in our home. Hands are for hugging, hands are for eating, hands are for washing up, hands are for brushing our teeth, whatever that may be. We don't kick, hands are for running, walking, playing sports, whatever it is. So whatever the rules are of the home, it becomes real important to really begin to set those boundaries and to keep the boundaries and to be consistent, that word again, to be consistent with the boundaries. I'm going to pause a little bit with that because I said a lot. Any thoughts, reactions, anything, aha moments, like, no, I'm not getting this, or any questions regarding what I've said thus far? And I'm looking also in the chat.
I have a question.
Yes.
Hi everyone. It's
Hello.
so I have an only child. He's a 5-year-old boy, and he's high energy. But I have trouble with the blurred line of myself of where he's doing something that is unacceptable behavior, and kind of like a fine line between trying not to upset him. Like he's already upset when he is acting out in this unacceptable behavior. So I don't want to upset him more or get him riled up. So I have a hard time trying to get through to him that it's not acceptable, but he knows it's not acceptable. But to get to the root problem, I guess it's just, how do I communicate it without giving mixed messages, I think, is the problem.
Yeah.
You know, you know what I'm trying to say?
I think I hear what you're saying. What I heard you say is that 5-year-old little boy may be experiencing some dysregulation and meltdown, and you want to be there for your baby. You want to support your little 5-year-old. And what's your 5-year-old's name?
Roman.
Roman?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so you want to be able to support Roman in the best way that you know how, yet at the same time, you want to be able to communicate to Roman that the behavior is not acceptable.
Right. And
did I kind of get that right?
Yes. And I want to do it in a way that's not, that's firm and consistent. But at the same time, not yelling, which is sometimes challenging. And so not yelling or, overreacting because of my own, like, past issues coming up in my overreactions.
The shark music, right?
Right, exactly.
The shark music,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So Roman it's important to reinforce the rules. Roman, whatever that rule is, but mommy is going to stay right here until you calm down. Mommy's going to be right here until you calm down. First and foremost, ensuring that there's safety, right? Now, if
Right.
the child is hitting his head or doing something that's unsafe, of course you have to intervene, right?
Right,
At that
right,
point.
right,
But
right.
if it's something that's not, if he's not hurting himself, he's not hurting another child, he's just having a meltdown. Emotions are a lot. I
Right,
mean, we know adults that have adult tantrums, right?
right, exactly.
So, and we have words, or we
Right.
would want to think we have words, right?
Right.
So, but our babies don't yet know all the words. And so mommy's going to, I could tell that you're real upset. You use the words, you use the emotional words. I could tell that you're very upset, that something happened today that really upset you, that might have hurt your feelings.
Right,
Mommy's
right.
going to stay right here until you calm down. And mommy, you're doing other things while Roman, you're not giving Roman that energy, because remember, child is going to feed off that negative energy,
Right,
but you
right.
want to acknowledge what you saw if this is
Yeah.
the first time. And I want to say that kids are smart, that if this is the only time that Roman is feeling like he's getting your attention, you need to be mindful of that. And what I mean when I say that, let's say that you're traveling a lot for work, and then you're coming back home, and then Roman is feeling like, oh, mommy's home, yay, yay, yay,
Right.
but is doing that kind of behavior to ensure that, you know, you see him. It
Mhm.
becomes important at that moment, on the times that he's not having a meltdown, to just reinforce your presence in the home. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think that's where I'm a little also challenged. Like, I don't travel for work. I think I'm
Okay.
actually very present, and I think my husband is too. So we're kind of odd in the fact that I think we're very, very present.
Mhm.
But you know, maybe for him, I don't know how he sees it, right?
Mhm.
And but nonetheless, in terms of here, we're here. I do think he struggles with the verbiage of how he's feeling.
Mhm.
And we also struggle with focusing all the attention on him because he's an only child. So we're
Mhm.
giving him that attention when
Yeah.
he's in his
Yeah.
tantrum, and we'll like take him to time out, and then it's like provoking him,
Yeah.
and then he gets in a worse tantrum. But we're focusing, like eating at the dinner table is so stressful because we're like focused on him. I mean, you know, I think that's part of the problem.
Yeah. And so you might, it sounds like you've answered your own question in many
Right.
ways,
Right.
because there's always another layer to the questions, that it sounds like you're working that layer underneath that iceberg, right? The
Right.
iceberg that we saw earlier.
Right.
Just think about all the other things that's beneath the iceberg that becomes important. But
Yeah.
I'm going to share with you some additional guidelines, and maybe some of this may resonate for you. So just 9 quick guidelines on how to give effective instruction. How am I doing with time? Am I okay, Drew? Okay.
Yeah, I think you're just fine. It's
Okay.
6:01, and I always think that taking real-time questions is especially valuable.
Yeah.
So we're great.
Yeah. So attention. So Roman's name is in my head now. So little Roman. So getting at his attention level. So let's say you mentioned the idea of dinner time, having that, getting at his level and having him help to set up the dinner table before dinner. So get him involved. Get him involved when you go grocery shopping and picking out the fruits. Also, in terms of emotion, really, I encourage parents so much to buy books on emotions. There's one book that I used to love, love, love. It's called How Are You Peeling? Not feeling, but peeling with a P, because it's fruits and vegetables. I believe it was mostly vegetables. And the vegetables had all these emotions. So reading books on feelings and emotions. And then while you're reading, saying, is this something that you sometimes feel? Yeah, mommy, when I'm at school and we're doing circle time and so-and-so's taking my toy, I feel just like that. So, and then talking it out with them, but getting on a child's level, you're all the way up here. If you could think back when you were a kid, our parents looked like giants, right? So getting down on a child's level is so important when you're really trying to redirect them, trying to instill what the boundaries are for your home. Very important. Be direct. Will you clean up? Would you like to clean up? I don't know who would ever say that as a parent. Would you like to clean up? Let's clean up. No, let's be specific. So-and-so, Gabrielle, I want you to put the blocks in the box, and I'm going to set this timer. And in 2 minutes, let's see if you can beat the timer. And the timer is going, and let's see if you can beat the timer. Be very specific about what the expectations are. And really framing it in a positive way. We often wonder why our babies at 2 are saying, no, 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 no. Guess what? We often say no. I was victim to that. No running, stop running, don't hit your sister. Stand next to me. We're going to the grocery store. Where do you need to stand? Next to me, next to you, mommy, next to you, daddy. Put your bottom on the chair, please. And the tone in which you say it, it's also critical. I think I have a slide about that, but if I don't, the tone in which you utilize, your facial expression, your gestures are so important when communicating what the rules are. Hold my hand. If you're going somewhere, even rehearsing with that child prior to getting there, prior going to the mall, prior going to the grocery store, where do you stand? Stand next to mommy, and having them repeat that as well. Point 4, just really similar to the previous slide, just be specific. Put your feet on the floor, please. Let's use our indoor voice, not our outdoor voice. So just really be specific about what it is that you want. And one message at a time. I remember a while ago, parents said, I would tell him, go upstairs, put his shoes under the bed, put the closet, and put this away and put that away, and stacking up everything in his book bag. Too many at one time. And especially with children who may have some processing, even if they don't have processing issues, just really one thing at a time. I want you to put your shoes in the closet. Put your shoes in the closet. And that's it. But not 3 or 4 things at one time. And then as parents, we become very upset when the child has not done all these things. But be one item at a time and be very specific. And always remember what's appropriate for your baby's age. It's very different for a 4-year-old versus a 7-year-old. It's very different. And so really think about your child's developmental age and what is appropriate. Sometimes we're asking children to do things that's outside of their developmental age. So really be mindful of that as well. And tone of voice. You see here, catch more with honey than with vinegar. So your tone of voice is so, so important. And be mindful of that. Any thoughts? Let me pause with this. Any thoughts about these points made thus far? Any aha moments?
I just love your point about given in a normal tone of voice. And it reminded me that a couple months ago when we had Dr. Jessica Phillips Silver talking about how music impacts the brain, that she said sing what you want them to do.
Yeah,
Sing
oh, I
it
love
and you'll
that.
grab their attention, so just in about how children kind of can't resist listening to you when you put the command or the request into a song. And I just thought that that was such a great way to get their attention.
I love that idea. I love that idea. Yes, yes. And remember to check yourself first. Because again, remember the shark music. It's in there. Remember what's coming up for you. And so if you need that time of 1 minute just to breathe before the follow through, before the consistency, it's okay to take it. It's okay to take it. Remember again, explanations given before a command or after the child has obeyed. So before, put the Legos in the box, and after, thanks so much for listening. I really love the way that you did that and put in the box, high five, bump, whatever, do whatever it is. So really reinforce that positive behavior that you're wanting to happen. Reinforce that the more often as possible, the most that you can to reinforce that. And don't just give babies busy work. Use only when it's necessary. And this is really for older children, but busy work, really, again, not an ideal way, but make it purposeful, make it meaningful, make it connected to what has happened. And sometimes what we're saying is not connected to what was going on. So make sure that it is connected. There is also a difference between can't and want and won't. So remember earlier when I said development, remember what a child is able to do based on that child's age. Because children want to be able to please. Children really desire to please the adults in their lives. And when I say adults, parents, grandparents, and the teachers in their schools. So it's that they don't want to often do this. Whatever is going on is sometimes that they can't do it. They don't have yet the skill set to regulate their behavior. They don't know what that means. And so we often have to model that for them. We have to give opportunities for them to learn how to self-regulate. And emotions, big emotions, small feelings, big feelings, all of it is scary. It's scary for them. And children need to experience all of it. So as much as we struggle with our baby's emotional meltdowns, it's part of the learning process. It's part of the learning curve for them. The goal is not for them to have emotions. The goal is to help them learn how to better regulate the emotion. How do I tolerate this? How do I know what to do? How do I label what's going on in my body right now, in the sensations in my body, in the heat that I may feel, how my hands may get clammy? How do I regulate that? How do I know? And that's one thing that we as adults is so important to teach our children. And often we hear this statement, catch them being good. And I have mixed feelings about that, but we often say it. My point in this slide that I really want to make is reinforce the behavior that you want as often as possible. Again, as often as possible. Acknowledge. I really like the way you helped your sister cross the street. I really like the way you held her hand and you held my hand. I really like the way you helped me get your sister in the car seat or your brother, whatever it is. Be very specific. When you're providing the reward, be very specific about it and be immediate. So when you see it, you provide that reinforcement, you provide that praise immediately for that child, to the extent that's possible. If a child is on a bus with you and that little boy figured out by watching and observing and hearing dad, grandpa, uncle say, we get up from the seat if an elder is standing up, and he does that, immediately reinforce that with a baby. Immediately give that kudos to the child for that behavior. Because part of it is that a significant part is that we're constantly wanting to teach our children how to self-regulate. Consistently talking about, remember the earlier slide, it's not that we don't want them to not have these big feelings, is that we're wanting to teach them how to self-regulate. And that self-regulation also is about us as adults self-regulating. Practice breathing. Let's take a deep breath together. Let's take a deep breath, showing children how to breathe. And again, giving ourselves compassion. Really watching the tone in which we talk to a child. If there are a lot of distractions in a room, in a place that you're going to, if you know that going down that aisle in the grocery store is the candy aisle and it's Halloween season, well, try to avoid that candy aisle. If you know that the child's going to have a hard time. If you've set it up already before going to the grocery store and you've shown the child what to expect, that's another story. But if you haven't done that, really try to avoid the distractions or remove distractions as much as possible. And I can't underscore enough the importance of engaging after the target section. Yes, I get that. Engage once you are calm. Engage once you're calm. It's okay to say, mommy needs a little bit of time right now, or daddy or grandma needs a little bit of time right now. And check your own body language. It's often said a larger percentage of communication is nonverbal. And our babies are looking to our nonverbal body language. If you have a baby and you're changing their stinky diaper and your face is twisting all over the place because it is a stinky diaper, be mindful of that. In the infant and early childhood, when I was doing training with infant and early childhood teachers, I would often talk about that. It may be stinky, but what? Talk about something else. Wow, you had an explosion. Wow, that was great. Walk yourself through it, and what's going to happen? That baby's going to start cracking up and laughing and all of that. Just be mindful of your facial expressions, your posture, those non-verbal pieces of communication, because again, the children are watching you. And regulation, self-regulation, and co-regulation, meaning the way you regulate in the presence of your child, that co-regulation is important. So if that child is in a storm, meet that storm with calm, so that you guys can coast together. Gotta meet it with calm. Prioritize how you are going to be in that moment. And again, don't beat yourself up if you had a bad day, if you couldn't self-regulate, if you couldn't co-regulate in that moment. It's okay. It's okay. Some kids and some babies do not like hugs. and that's okay too. And so sometimes, with the example a mom just gave, and we spoke about Roman, let's say that Roman is one of those little boys that do not like hugs. You stay calm and you stay right next to them. You stay close. You name the feelings. And again, you wait until that calm, that episode has happened, has somewhat calmed down, but you stay calm. You regulate yourself. You establish that eye contact when it's necessary, not staying up there, but going at the eye level. And you're seeking to understand what's going on with the baby. And so seeking to understand, maybe pulling out a book and reading about a series of emotions, and then pausing and listening and understanding and really showing empathy. Wow, this sounds like it was a real hard day. And when they're ready, would it help if mommy gave you a hug, or grandma gave you a hug, or daddy gave you a hug? And engaging in that. So I want to pause again to see anybody has any thoughts, any questions.
Again, anybody, if you'd like to, you can feel free to unmute yourself if you feel comfortable throwing out your question with your voice, or that you can definitely put your questions or comments into the chat. We have about 10 minutes left, so if anyone has something that has been on their mind or that's coming up for them during the session that they're really hoping to get answered or to discuss, definitely let us know.
At the end of the day, and I really appreciate Brene Brown on so many levels, and she has a wholehearted parenting manifesto. Above all else, I want you to know you are loved and lovable. I think that's what we all want to be able to communicate to our babies. You will learn this from my words and my actions, the lessons on love and how I treat you and how I treat myself. How I treat you and how I treat myself. I needed to read that one several times because children are watching us. I want you to engage with the world from a place of worthiness. And this is not, I only have daughters. So this thing about being worthy in raising daughters was such an important piece. You will learn that you are worthy of love, belonging, joy, every time you see me practice self-compassion and embrace my own imperfections. Oh my gosh, let's read that one again. My own imperfections. We will practice courage in our family by showing up, letting ourselves be seen, honoring vulnerability. We will share our stories of struggle. Mommy had a real hard day today. Daddy had a real hard day. But you know what? Tomorrow's going to be a better day. But I need a hug. I need this. Showing that, we will teach you compassion by practicing compassion and setting and respecting our boundaries. And above all else, I just want to encourage you to skip a slide, just to take a deep breath in this thing called parenting and really know that the more you keep calm and you take a deep breath, the better it will be, because you will be better equipped to really be present for your babies at that time. Now, I do know, of course, that there are times that children need, and parents, caretakers need to receive external support. And these are some times when that's needed, especially when it gets more closer to the end, when you see cruelty to animals, when you see destructive behavior, when you see fire setting, stealing. But there were a lot of signs before you got there. And the signs were in the middle some disruptive behaviors. So it's always good to know when to seek support of a professional. Our babies, as well as ourselves, these past 2.5, 3 years have been challenging for so many. And so it does require a little bit of extra love. It does require extra self-compassion. It does require extra compassion for our children's behaviors, because there's a lot that they too are holding. And I provided this referral to Drew and through DCPS that has a link of a support behavior health program to Children's Hospital if and when you need the extra professional support, how you can obtain that. In the meantime, there's this wonderful, wonderful online platform called CLI Engage. And there's a series of activity collections for family. It is all free. You just, sometimes I believe you have to sign up for that. It does say that, sign up, but it has a collection of different ideas. I just encourage you to go check it out on those days, especially in the winter. If babies are having to stay home because of the snow or this and that, and you're trying to figure out what to do, they have a wealth of information on this that you can use. And just last, I want to remind you that it's always, 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 always easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. So we pay for it on one side or the other. I always said, I'd rather pay for it on the front end when the babies are 0 to 3 to 5 and lay that foundation of love, firmness, expectation, boundaries, consistency, continuity, follow through on the front end, so that when they're 12, 13, 14, 15, I've already done the work. It's not impossible to do it then, but it's so much easier if we invest in the energy up front. So thank you. Any questions? I'm going to stop share and see if anyone has any questions.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. I'm going to give everybody a minute to enter any questions that they have in the chat or to unmute themselves and share. I also want to point out that the resources that you mentioned, we dropped into the chat, and we will also reshare those in our monthly newsletter. So if you registered for the session, you'll automatically receive our monthly newsletter with a link to the recording of the session, and then also those resources. Does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask? And Megan, also feel free to pull any that registrants entered beforehand as well.
Can we also put the survey link in the chat as well?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
There we go.
Thank you. But while we have time, I think just about 3 minutes.
Yep.
Any questions, anything resonate for anyone?
You know, there was one great question that somebody had put into the registration about gender and behavior and discipline, and feeling self-conscious about having a really sensitive son, and wondering about the balance of honoring their sensitivity and wanting them to be in touch with their feelings, and also being in a society that places value on strength. What are your thoughts about that?
You know, Mom, as long as Dad, as long as that baby knows that you have his or her back, that's all that's really important. The world is going to be the world, and sometimes they are going to get hit with a lot of negative energy in the world. But it is so important to know that, to reinforce for a son. Did I hear the question was around a son or a daughter or son?
Around a son, yeah.
Yeah. My world is all the girls. So, so to reinforce for your son that no matter what the feelings are, it's gonna be okay. boy, wouldn't we like to have a little boy grow up as a husband that has emotional intelligence?
Absolutely.
Right? Or whatever happens for this child, but to be a partner in his life with someone in a meaningful way and be able to have emotional intelligence. I think that's a wonderful thing. So I just continue to encourage you to provide language, emotional language for that baby to describe what he is feeling on the inside. Yeah.
And then I think the last question, unless Megan, you can see any others in the chat, there were a couple of questions that participants entered beforehand, and I noticed that there was a theme around children that that might have disabilities and
Yeah.
the challenges of determining whether a behavior is linked to, a disability or, a developmental issue that they might have, and what is just behavior that, is maybe attention seeking or needs correction. And so do you have any like advice about what resources parents could go to help distinguish these two things, or any tips to share?
Well, more tips to share, but as I said, CLI Engage has a lot. And it's also in Spanish. I forgot to mention that.
Oh, amazing.
They also have, and it may be in another language, but I do know English and Spanish for sure. But also, again, with a child with a specific disability, it's getting to know your child and understanding what he or she is able to do and when they need support. But with a child with a disability, that disability does not define the child. And I think to the extent that we, as that support network around the baby, really say, you are more than your disability. This is just one part of you that may show up in this class, but not in this class. You may be struggling here, but not in there. And to know, but yet still, these are the boundaries for the home. And yet still, these are the expectations of the home. Again, really beginning, because the messaging often that babies hear when there is a disability that has been confirmed through an IEP or 504, whatever the case may be, to think that they are that disability. You are not that disability. It's just one element of you. And I think that's an important framing that needs to be said to a child.
We did have one more question in the chat if you have time.
Yeah.
It's
I'm
about
curious
timeouts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think they're still effective, or is there another method that may be more effective? Thanks so much. Clinically, I do think they are still effective. And the caveat will be is how it's done. So you're not going to put a 4-year-old child in timeout for 8 minutes. It's no longer effective. 4-year-old child, 4 minutes. 3-year-old child, 3 minutes. 6-year-old child, 6 minutes. So yes, and it depends on how you framed it all along and how you did it and how you called it. You could say, we just need a little bit of quiet time right now. Let's get ourselves together. Doesn't mean that 4-year-old that's getting himself or herself together for 4 minutes, when that 4-minute ends and you have your little timer, and that 4 minutes ends, you get him back to doing the thing that he needed to do or she needed to do. That does not, and if he or she is still kind of kicking and not wanting to do, guess what? 4 minutes goes back up again in quiet time. Behavior will get worse before it gets better once you start being consistent with the expectation. If all along it was a little loosey-goosey and then all of a sudden it got consistent, it will get worse before it gets better. But you gotta hold on to that consistency. So I hope SW, I answered your question.
I love that. And I think that that's reassuring to all of us that either work with children or have children, and you might try a new method or a new strategy and it feels like, oh, this isn't going to work, or I picked the wrong one, but just that importance of being mindful that sometimes it does get worse before it gets better, and just to be consistent and
Yes.
firm in
Yeah.
the approach. So,
Yeah.
well, with that, I
Love
want to be
up on the
respectful.
baby.
Yes. I want to be respectful of everybody's time this evening. And so with that, I think we'll close out, and just to remind everyone that you can definitely send us follow-up questions anytime. We can enter our email address in the chat. We'll make sure that you get those resources and those links and a recording of the session. And we invite you to take our survey. Not only does your feedback inform the content of these sessions and the topics that we cover, but as a bonus, you're entered to win a bundle of children's books every time you complete the survey. So definitely take a moment to do that. And with that, I hope everyone has a great night, has a safe night. Dr. Charlo Swilly, thank you so much for joining us. We so appreciate it. And we are thinking about your family in Florida and hoping that everyone is safe and well.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Absolutely. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.